Welcome to room 31. And don't stare at the camera. Thank you all for coming today to the presentation of Christine Fruin, who is a candidate for the Associate University Librarian for Scholarly Communication and Collections. So, without further ado, I'll give you just some brief. You've already looked online to see all the information, so I'll repeat this for you, for those of you who aren't able to read effectively. Right now, she comes from sunny Florida, but she has a Midwestern background, so this isn't a complete shock to her that we have cold weather in November.
It was 35 at my house this morning.
Oh, there you go. So, but they were ready for that. She's currently the Scholarly Communications Librarian at the University of Florida Smathers Library, and she also has had an appointment a little bit back at the University of Illinois Springfield, where she was the Director of Collections and Research Services. Her educational background is an MLS from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, fine institution. She has a Juris Doctorate from Southern Illinois University and a BA in Political Science from Knox College. And with that amount of introduction, I will turn the floor over to Christine. Oh, and the presentation title is, just a second here.
It's right there.
Got that? Yeah.
Behind you, that
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you all for coming and for inviting me to come interview with you all today. I've got to meet a lot of wonderful people already, and I've really enjoyed our conversations and look forward to more of them as the day moves on. I was asked today to talk about a really broad topic, and I was kind of like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this in 15, 20 minutes? I can write a book on this. To talk about kind of the challenges and opportunities that are presented to especially the units of collections and technical services by scholarly communication initiatives in academic libraries. My actual title of my presentation kind of reflects where I think that this can go and what can be accomplished is really a move which I think is happening in a lot of academic libraries, moving from merely being collectors of stuff to being more active participants in the production of content and really kind of promoting better access and discovery and use of our rich collection. So that's kind of where we're headed. So I've identified, this is not an exhaustive list, of really kind of four really driving goals of scholarly communication that really, and these goals, I kind of chose these because these have direct relevance to the areas of collections and technical services. And I think that these kind of represent areas where collections and technical services can lend a lot in terms of their expertise to kind of help drive these goals forward within the library. And they are, I'm going to read them to you, to preserve the right to use and reuse copyrighted works, promoting open access to research, creating and collecting kind of new means and modes of disseminating scholarship, and identifying and measuring research impacts. So these are kind of four themes of scholarly communication. Now I was asked to talk about this in terms of opportunities and challenges. And I like this image. This is kind of how I view opportunities and challenges. Is you have a staircase and you have an escalator, both going up. And really the goals are the same. You're both trying to get to the top, trying to really kind of get, rise up. The stairs kind of represent challenges. It might take a little bit more effort to get up there. You might have to step on a landing for a moment, kind of catch your breath, think about, okay, I can keep moving forward. Escalator, a little bit more easier, smoother ride. Sometimes you can dart off to the left and run up past the people that are just kind of riding along and get there a little bit faster. But I don't really like to think of challenges as being negative. It really is the same as the escalator, kind of both taking you up, just as opportunities you kind of both taking you up. So I hope that you kind of appreciate kind of this representation and kind of my thinking of challenges and opportunities. So talking more specifically now about, and I apologize if I'm going fast, I'm trying to be cognizant of the time constraints and want to allow time for questions and discussion. So I'm going to kind of talk about the opportunities and challenges that are presented by each of these four goals for collections and technical services specifically, but also recognizing, and I will reiterate this point at the end, really for me, scholarly communication is a goal for all units in the libraries. It's something that we all should be aspiring to, principles that we should all be advocating and promoting. So just so you know that I am not thinking this is only a collections and technical services goal, but because that's what I was asked to speak about, that's kind of what I'm focusing on. But I think it's important for selectors, for subject specialists, certainly for digital initiatives folks. It definitely has import and impact beyond the collection technical services roles. So preserving the right to use copyright works. What are the opportunities to do this in the areas of collection and technical services? Well, certainly for our electronic resources, we have the opportunity to promote broader access and reuse through licensing. Those of you who have met with me already this morning know that I am not somebody who is just going to sign a license agreement. Being a lawyer, I will go through that thing line by line, and I am not afraid to push back with vendors to make sure that we are promoting those important goals that we should have from scholarly communication, that we want to be able to reuse works, electronic works in a variety of contexts, whether it be through, what kind of scholarly sharing provisions are in there, what kind of interlibrary loans, course reserves. These are all provisions of fair use. Definitely want to make sure fair use is provided for in a license agreement. So these are things that we should be striving to include in our license agreements, and certainly not conversations that I am afraid to have. Further through licensing, we can address things such as text and data mining, mediated deposits or automated deposits into the repository. Is there a way to populate a repository, working with vendors, working with publishers, of author manuscripts that our local faculty are offering? Even those kinds of things can be covered in your license agreements. Also, we should be working on how do we make sure that those license terms are communicated to our users. It really doesn't do much good if just the library knows. Are there ways through the catalog, some kind of forward-facing, public-facing mechanism so that folks that are using our stuff, whether they are within or without the university, know what rights they have? I think this can have a real chilling effect on people if they just kind of see stuff and they don't know what they can use. And so I'm a big proponent of having, rights management being part of digital works, being invisible, having it be understandable and not being overly legalistic. Things I talked several times with people about a public performance rights project that I've done at UF, where we tracked and reported through our catalog and metadata public performance licenses that are required for DVDs. So this is kind of another piece of that. Secondly, local collections, especially in your special collections and archives. Lots of rich materials here, ripe for digitization, making them available for not only our local users, but even researchers around the world. That is a really wonderful opportunity for partnership and collaboration between technical services and special collections, especially your folks doing metadata. Because really, just getting in a hurry and digitizing and throwing the stuff up there, but not preparing the access points, having the metadata available, having the rights management available. If people can find the stuff, first of all, can they find the stuff, and not knowing what they can do with it. That we want to be able to maximizing the opportunities there. Finally, authors' rights, acquisitions, and e-resources. Librarians are skilled in licensing and reading and interpreting contracts. I think there's an opportunity here to utilize that experience in helping authors read and understand their own contracts. It's something that I already do quite a bit of, do a lot of author consultation, a lot of authors' rights workshops. And so I think kind of tapping into that expertise that we already have in working with vendors and working with publishers in reading, negotiating, and understanding contracts. So challenges. For a lot of folks, this kind of what a good friend of mine at MIT, Alan Finney, she called it principled negotiation, ice and back files, and that it's openness. It's kind of a new way of thinking for people, and it's a new dialogue. And so that's just kind of getting comfortable with knowing what you can ask for, how to ask for it, understanding kind of that dance that is negotiation. It is sometimes uncomfortable for people, so that is a challenge. Kind of bringing these kinds of new considerations might generate some new workflows, some new policies for people, so that can be challenging. People kind of getting used to new ways of working together, and achieving and doing their work. Also, a challenge is to I'm not advocating that you completely throw out the window the traditional considerations that we make when we collect and acquire materials. I mean, price, of course, still does matter. User needs still matter. But I think those have to be balanced against kind of these larger concerns and larger goals of the library and the institution. of, kind of working towards openness, and really making sure that we understand kind of user behavior, where are they looking for stuff, how do they want to use stuff, and are we providing them with the information to encourage those uses. Second, promoting open access to research. This was, again, Ellen Finney, in an article that she recently wrote talking about this kind of move that they've made at MIT of merging scholarly communications and collections, calling it voting with dollars. Libraries are an integral player, hopefully you all know this, in the open access movement. And through our acquisitions decisions, we can vote with our dollars by assessing potential purchases in relation to whether they actually work to transform the scholarly communication system towards being more open. And so it might be, maybe choosing not to go a particular route with the vendor because they are very, very opposed to making things more openly and available, and being willing to feel comfortable with maybe sometimes making those decisions. Not saying I'm going to cut off Science Direct because Elsevier is the bad guy, but kind of thinking a little bit more principally about and what if all libraries started doing this collectively, doing our part to kind of bring about that change. Open access certainly opens up the door to having further collaboration with other university offices, in particular the Office of Research. What can we do to help support compliance with public access mandates? I think there's, again, a role here to be played with that as well. And how can we communicate, whether particular materials are subject to a mandate, or how can we promote access to those or support deposits? I think there's roles to be played there as well. A growing area of interest and support and even collecting in libraries is open educational resources, or OER. Again, we are kind of in the business of evaluating and collecting materials. Faculty are increasingly turning towards libraries to help them evaluate OERs, how to know what's good. Again, if sometimes, even though they're open, sometimes they are still subject to license agreements or other kinds of terms of use. And again, it's an opportunity for us within collections and technical services to apply our experience and our knowledge in doing this to kind of a new area. It's also an opportunity of, okay, collections budgets. Is there something that can be done there with helping support local production of OER or other kinds of OER support there. Campus open access policy, not sure kind of where, I've kind of been getting a sense of where that might be here. If that was something that to come about, that is definitely going to present a huge opportunity for the library to get involved in educating and promoting access to that. And it's, again, it's going to come down to metadata. A lot of these things are going to come down to metadata and helping folks get their stuff where it needs to be and making it accessible. Challenge always with open access is determining quality and relevancy. There's lots of different lists and criteria floating around out there about how to determine what is a quality open access resource. If it's things that we are perhaps buying memberships into, there's certainly pros and cons to that, to get authors reduced processing charges, whether that's a worthwhile investment, that can be challenging. And kind of related to that, I don't know, I think many of you are aware and perhaps participated last Friday in the online event at Kansas, this whole debate about one of the prevalent, but believe it or not, primary modes of financing open access publishing is article processing charges, or APCs. There's been a really fascinating debate going on amongst librarians, who are also economists, about whether or not APCs is a sustainable business model. Is it one that libraries should be supporting? Is it something that we should be driving our money into instead of subscriptions? I don't have the answer, but I think the debate is a really fascinating one. It's something to definitely be paying attention to going forward. Whether or not we can kind of turn journal publishing on its head instead of paying subscriptions, if that's something that we should be doing. Except I don't know the answer. If APCs are really the way to go, or if we should be not be thinking about that. I know there's some arguments on both sides about if the market could support it, is it just going to actually end up driving prices up? That's something I'm happy to chat about. Even hear your thoughts if you've given thoughts to that. But there's a couple different initiatives that have been looking at that. I don't know if you have looked at those. Earlier this year, the OA 2020 report came out of Europe. And really, there's an opportunity to be a signatory onto that. And interestingly, only one U.S. university has signed on in support of OA25. It's been largely rejected in the U.S. Lots of European support. But they have kind of a different history in Europe with APCs because they've had some mandates that were highly in support of gold open access, whereas we have more of a green open access. Depositing in repositories is more of our culture here, especially with our mandated open access. There's been some other reports. The Pay It Forward project is one as well, looking at whether or not libraries through their collections budgets should be supporting article processing charges rather than subscription. So big challenge there and something to be looking at in the years to come. The third goal is kind of creating and collecting new means of disseminating scholarship. Here we definitely have an opportunity to further leverage the digital repository and our digital collections as a publishing platform. What opportunities are there to publish locally produced scholarship or locally edited scholarship and kind of offer that to our faculty and even our students as a publishing locus. We've talked about this in some of the meetings today. Again, I think we have a big opportunity to make more accessible and visible our local collections, special collections, and archives. I think it's also a great opportunity to have great collaboration between cataloging and metadata and special collections and archives. I have seen this be very successful at the University of Florida. It's something that it's something that has come about over time. It was uncomfortable at first, but it's working really well. That you kind of approach those digitization projects with a kind of a team approach where you have the subject specialist or the curator, not sure kind of what all terminologies or titles are used here, but sometimes we refer to our special collections folks as curators. Always want to have someone from cataloging and metadata on it because again, if you don't have good metadata, if you aren't working with an agreed upon controlled vocabulary, not creating local taxonomies that are relevant to your local collections, people aren't going to find this stuff. That is one of the problems that we have at UF. Our digital collections, the goal when it was launched was let's get as much stuff in there as we can, and no thought whatsoever was paid to metadata. And I know there's something in there because I put it in there, but I can't even find it. And it's a metadata problem. So if we're going to devote the resources to digitizing, resources means staff time, money, to digitize and make these things available, we want them to be able to be discoverable. Rights management is a piece of that as well. It's another project that I worked on at UF, was developing a whole rights management statement system for all of our digital collections in the digital repository. Because again, if people then can find the stuff, we want them to use it and know that they can use it. And rights management is a big piece of that. Another opportunity is definitely strategic partnerships and ongoing collaborative digital collections such as HathiTrust, DPLA, Share. What role does this library have to play in that? And I think that's another consideration. Challenges. I think a lot of times, especially with digital collections, the tendency is to overlook drafting a collection development policy for a digital collection. Again, we have expertise in-house. Collection management policies are part of what we do, but we are applying it in a new context. We need to decide what kind of stuff is relevant and important to be put into the repository so it doesn't just become a dumping ground. And so that might be a challenge because that might be a new area of how do we write a good collection management or collection development policy for the digital repository for digital collections. But it's again another opportunity, and really embedded in all these challenges there are opportunities. It's an opportunity for collaboration. Kind of bring different library groups together to work collaborative with our projects, which really kind of do achieve this overarching goal of promoting and maximizing discovery and access to our collections, whether they are licensed or purchased or are local ones. Possible challenge, especially for cataloging or even acquisitions, is scholarship and what is meant by scholarship is kind of changing. It's not just monographs and journal articles anymore. What are we going to call these new containers of stuff? I know digital humanities folks are in particular kind of grappling with this. What do we call these things? Okay, what do we call them? How do we describe them? So there may not be kind of already vocabulary or terms out there. How do we describe these new forms of scholarship? Or containers is kind of a term I've heard tossed Resources, I think really no matter what you're talking about, is always a challenge. Do we have the staff? Do those staff have the skills that they need? What can we do to make sure they do get the skills that they need to feel comfortable and confident in doing this kind of new, what may be new work for them? And money is always a challenge. I don't care where you are, what state you're in. Money is always a challenge. Another possible challenge, and this particularly I think comes into play when you're talking about these strategic partnerships, is mission and goal alignment. Is the missions or goals of perhaps this external partner in alignment with what the missions and goals of this library, of the university, and making sure that you're not sacrificing those or compromising on those just to get more stuff, or what might seem like a good idea. What are you compromising or what are you gaining? And so that can sometimes, bring about maybe difficult conversations as in looking at that. And there are conversations that should involve lots of folks representing lots of different areas. The final kind of goal of scholarly communication that I think has some relevancy to collections and technical services is identifying and measuring research impact. Acquisition of electronic resources is an opportunity there. Looking at, does this particular database offer new metrics as part of its product? Is it something that maybe is an add-on that might be economically feasible or useful for the campus for us to add on? If it's something that's already part of the price, is it something folks are even going to use? Do we want to look at maybe a standalone product as adding to part of our electronic resources, stuff like Plum Analytics or something like that? Is that something that we want to invest funds in to provide our faculty and researchers with kind of these new metrics, alt metrics they're called? Definitely, another thing that's really becoming important for faculties is kind of creating these researcher profiles or researcher IDs, such as ORCID. I think there's an opportunity for cataloging metadata. We are the experts in authorities and identities, and that's an opportunity to apply that knowledge and that skill in assisting researchers in building kind of researcher profiles so that people can find and identify their body of work. One of the challenges is, I think, and this is a kind of a global challenge, is the acceptance and use of alternative metrics by scholars, by researchers. Is it worthwhile for us to invest time and money in providing this as a service or providing this as a resource? Are people going to use it? And I don't know. I don't have answers to all of these. These are just things I kind of think about. Also, is there if we're going to integrate some of these new measures or metrics, or for example, ORCID, into is there a means of integrating this into existing library and university systems? And ORCID integration is one of the first that pops into my mind. Is there, I don't know what kind of internal ID system that you use here. At UF we have this thing called your Gator link, which is kind of your unique identifier that you have as a faculty member or a researcher. Even students have them at UF. And we worked really long and hard with UFIT to get their ORCID numbers integrated into kind of the internal system profile. So now there is an actual, and now we're working on getting it integrated into our repository as well, so that all these systems, can they all talk to each other? Can they all work together? So again, that requires, and offers the opportunity for collaboration with external campus units as well. So this, I keep talking about maximizing discovery and access to knowledge for all users. This library, we certainly have an obligation to our faculty, our staff, our researchers, our students, but being a public land-grant institution, we have kind of a larger audience that we really are serving to stay true to the mission of the university. So that's why I say all users. And when you have kind of this convergence of scholarly communication and collections and cataloging and metadata, kind of in that center where those meet, is really where that's going to happen, is be able to achieve that goal of maximizing discovery and access to knowledge. And as I said at the beginning, is not discounting the role that other units in the library play. Scholarly communication, it's what we do. It's what libraries do. It's something that we maybe not always called it that, but it's what we do. And so everybody, from the library staff person who's checking in newspapers to the dean, has a obligation and a role to play in promoting the skills, are the principles of scholarly communication. And in particular, I think the unique opportunity here where these units are combined to really achieve kind of that goal. So I know I didn't do this in 15 to 20 minutes, it's just not gonna happen. So hopefully I have left enough time for questions.
Anybody got any questions for Christine this morning? Go. Go.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about negotiating with contracts and also checking to make sure that they're meeting like certain requirements. Have you ever done accessibility audits or negotiation?
Yes. And I'm glad, and actually I had that written down, I didn't say it. Accessibility is very important. You know, ARL has provided some standard contract language for folks to plug in to contracts, and I think publishers and vendors are becoming more comfortable with that. But I also think, and I did this at UF, I've been working with our general counsel's office after MIT and Harvard were sued regarding MOOCs and putting content online. I had that conversation. I said, I'm kind of worried about, especially like library instructional materials, things that are going up in digital collections, we really don't necessarily know how they're being used instructionally, and really don't have the legal obligation to know. But at the very minimum, we took a look at, okay, what about the stuff that we know that we're producing and putting online, so library instructional materials, tutorials and things, and endeavored to, I said, okay, all this stuff has got to be at least captioned or transcribed. So we kind of took a look at what we were doing, and it kind of prompted some instructional librarians to revisit some things that may have been up for a really long time and needed updating anyway, if they were going to have to add this. But I do think that that's really important, especially like with streaming media, is to ensure that those materials, and I think most vendors do provide that closed captioning or transcripts, but it's something to definitely be checking, because especially because you just don't know if that stuff's going to be used for online classes or being assigned, and making sure that if it's not available through the service, make sure it's provided for through the license agreement. I don't know if that answered the question. Okay.
Other questions?
Really? Yes.
I'm Harrison of the Public Works.
Oh, okay.
My question I think is, what role do you see, or do you see a role for Scarlet Communications initiatives that academic libraries playing a role in increasing opportunities for minority or scholars from the Global South to participate?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that point was, I don't know, did any of you participate in the Kansas State? Did y'all watch that? I mean, that was a huge topic of discussion. It was very enlightening as well, that open access, what open access can certainly do, and also the potential that there's there even trying to do more harm and wanting to prevent that. And so I think, especially with digitizing collections that are relevant to minority groups, I think we need to be especially akin to be definitely promoting that research and promoting instruction in those areas. I'm not sure directly your question, but I've definitely seen, I mean, absolutely, that is certainly a role, and certainly something that's important. And even in other collection decisions have to be, but that should be part of the consideration for sure. Oh.
I have a question. Have you had any experience with interinstitutional cooperation, especially for collection?
Inter or intra?
Intra. Well,
Intra.
with other institutions. With other
institutions. We've been talking about this quite a bit also today. In Illinois, in particular, we had a wonderful organization, CARLI, Consortium of Academic Research Libraries in Illinois. We did a lot of consortial licensing, which was wonderful. I think we got access to a lot of stuff, and I think that's something to definitely be looking at here for opportunities to do that. And it's a great, the other thing that's kind of a great opportunity, and I've seen this actually happening in Florida, it's sometimes a good opportunity to train sometimes our librarians at other institutions on how to be better at negotiating. It's something that maybe so it's kind of an opportunity to kind of do some cross-training or learning from one another when you engage in that kind of consortial or collaborative collecting. Because there may be folks that are uncomfortable with it, unfamiliar from it, and if you are comfortable, they can sometimes learn from you. And I think that's kind of added bonus, and you can work more with your fellow librarians, and maybe helps, folks out at smaller institutions that maybe don't have the resources or the time to devote to these things. How can we teach them, or how can they also learn for this? And I think there's probably a lot of untapped, my guess is a lot of untapped opportunities for that around here. Just given that there's only 3 state institutions, I don't think, in Florida we have the SUS, there's however many, 11 state universities. There's a lot of collaborative, not just consortial licensing or collaborative licensing that goes on, but even, we talked a little bit about in the resource sharing group, we have like shared catalogs. And what can we do to promote resource sharing collaboratively, as well as collaborative collecting. There's some agreements that are going on in the various state universities in Florida that, okay, we're going to collect in this area, we're going to collect in this area. Because what was happening is if you were looking at the shared catalog, you were seeing 20, however many copies of a single book. And not really every library needed it. So there was kind of some agreements like, okay, well, FSU, we're going to primarily focus on this. UF, we're going to focus. And because we have this shared catalog and the ILL turnaround is really quick, if someone really needs it, they're going to be able to get it from one of the other institutions relatively quickly. And it's a cost savings measure as well. So I think there's, I don't, like I said, with only 3 state institutions here, don't know if there's, if that is ripe for that, but there's also however many small university or small, privates, community colleges, I think are often overlooked, which is unfortunate. I worked a lot through the Scholarly Communications Interest Group in Florida with community college librarians. Those people are just as interested and concerned about this stuff as the people at the big Research One institutions. And we shouldn't be overlooking community colleges either. They can be really great partners on things as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can you tell me what your experience? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I acknowledged her. That's my bad. I'm
Okay, that's
sorry.
fine. Well, why don't you guys start?
Were you looking at me?
I was looking at you, yes,
Okay.
because I didn't see anybody else, so I apologize to whoever got overlooked.
I'm sorry too. Can you talk about your experience with PDA?
Oh gosh, I got asked this question earlier too. PDA was just becoming like the in thing to do about the time that I left University of Illinois Springfield, so I don't have a lot of direct experience with that, but I've kind of talked to, and I'm gonna, for those of you that were in that meeting, I'm kind of be repeating myself. From what I have kind of gleaned about it, and really in general, I am kind of sometimes skeptical when libraries rush in to do the in thing, like, ooh, everybody's doing this, we gotta do it too. I think you really have to kind of step back, sometimes let other people do it. What kind of experiences are they having? Is it a good model for our institution, and kind of look at it and not be in such a rush to do the in thing? And what I have been hearing from folks, I go to the Charleston conference, and sometimes I have poked in on presentations or just listening to sometimes conversations with acquisitions folks, that PDA really is not all that. So that it was a lot of times very expensive, the economic benefits from it in exchange for what you were getting. So not saying I'm completely closed off from it, but I'm not going to like rush into it if it doesn't make economic sense, and if it's not going to really support the kind of collection building that needs to go on. But it's certainly something worthy of having a conversation about. But I kind of got a sense in the group that I met with earlier that these conversations have kind of and considerations have already been going on. And we ran out of time because I wanted to kind of learn more about where y'all's thoughts were on that. If that was something that you were like really married to, ooh, we experimented with it, it did not go well. Do we maybe need to be exploring other options? Do we want to, get rid of it altogether? We didn't really get a chance to kind of get too far down into it. But I don't have oh yeah, I know, I've tried all the vendors, I know all about it. I'm not an expert in that. Now, where was the question? Okay.
When you were looking into this position, what surprised you about Iowa State?
Well, as I told at my telephone interview, and also the first thing that grabbed me was the title, Scholarly Communication and Collections. This is kind of an emerging organizational kind of move that some of your big name, fancy libraries are doing. Berkeley has done it, MIT has done it, Harvard has done it, kind of bringing together scholarly communication and collections. So that immediately, and I've been very intrigued by that, have kind of been following, like I said, my friend at MIT, she and I have kind of had some conversations about it. So the fact that Iowa State, this is not like saying anything negative about Iowa State, but I'm like, ooh, Iowa State's doing that? That made me stand up and take notice. Said a lot to me about your dean, and being kind of forward thinking. So that's really kind of what attracted me, because I know this is, I think it's an emerging model that has the opportunity to do a lot of good, and can kind of change, like I said, moving away from just being collectors of stuff to kind of not only just promoting, discovery and access, but really doing our part towards kind of transforming the whole scholarly communication system and kind of influencing the way, because the way that we do things, the way scholarship is produced and sold, and it's broken, and it really cannot continue, and each library has to do their part. So it just kind of made me sit up and take notice that, an institution of this size was looking at that, was making that consideration.
One more question, if you have it?
Megan does, yeah.
I don't know, I saw one other hand
Did
over here.
someone else have one? Because go ahead.
Go ahead.
Could you talk about some of the opportunities you've taken to advocate for open access beyond just the campus and preaching to the choir? Taking it to higher levels in the profession itself, organizations and publishers.
Okay. Trying to think of the best way to answer that. Man, I should have Megan's question.
Megan could have been tough too.
I have been active, certainly have been active in a lot of groups that are working collaboratively, collectively to bring about change. I am a member of, all these acronyms, ACRL, not ACRL, ACRL, the Association of Southeastern Research Libraries. I was a visiting program officer for a year to kind of develop their scholarly communication program. And it was really about, and there was a lot of people within ACRL libraries who were kind of new to scholarly communication, and so it was really kind of my role there to develop a program, develop resources to help those folks kind of understand open access and what it meant and how, and ways they could promote it on their campus. I did the same thing with the Florida Scholarly. I've really kind of been a teacher, I think, in what open access is and helping folks understand how they can implement it locally. And so I've had lots of different opportunities to do that through my work with ACRL, with the Florida Scholarly Communication Interest Group that I formed and have gotten really going. And then most recently with the ACRL Scholarly Communication Toolkit, which I was contracted to completely overhaul and migrate. And they promoted that and launched that kind of in connection with Open Access Week, again, providing folks with resources. With publishers, unfortunately, I'm frequently kept out of conversations, at least in terms of what we're doing at UF. And so I haven't gotten to have many opportunities to work directly with publishers at UF, but certainly when I have been out and can see them, challenge them, and again, it's about being sensitive also. I think sometimes this kind of gets lost in the conversation, and we have to still be sensitive to their overhead and their business models, and I think that sometimes gets overlooked. And I think the only way to have a productive and successful conversation with publishers, as with anything, is validating what their needs are, and at the same time advocating for your own. And okay, how can we somehow bring that in the middle? And so that's kind of one of the things about this position that's attracted me, that would position me to be in a place to actually have those kind of productive conversations and perhaps bring about those kind of positive results. I hope that's a satisfactory answer. Sometimes questions like, wow, I need time to sit and kind of think about that.
Well, maybe you
I'm gonna say,
I don't know how quick it would be, but I'm curious what you think about the auto-population of Elsevier content into your repository. Yeah, sorry.
what's that?
She couldn't resist.
I know. And anyone who's aware, I knew coming in that, and Beth and I talked about it at dinner last night, I knew that question would come up. It's a sensitive one for me, because it was not well, first of all, so you're talking about the UF Elsevier partnership, I'm assuming, is that what you're
Yeah, the
talking
one
about?
that redirects people to
Yeah.
Science Direct a lot.
So I found out about it when you all found out about it, when the press release dropped in May. Unfortunately, it's unfortunate for a lot of reasons. I am kind of, the repository management and operation is actually located in this, seems to be Katie Sullivan. Remember, I still have a job I gotta go back to. Is actually run in a facility about 9 miles off of campus, our digital production services, and the repository manager operates within that group. Much to my dismay and the manager's dismay as well, she and I don't get to work together. It's really unfortunate because I think the repository, that's like one of the primary vehicles for accomplishing scholarly communication goals. And that's partially why this happened. I think also it partially happened because she probably knew I would be screaming and kicking and why are we doing this? So believe me, I had known about it. Doesn't mean I would have been listened, but I would have been arguing strong against it. To me, it's a compromise. So it is not, doesn't mean that I think we should not be, entering into collaborations with publishers ever. Absolutely not. Do I think that was a good one? No, no. I have a really big problem with using something that's supposed to be an open access repository. I mean, the very thing that it's founded upon to drive people to paywalled sites. I think it's ludicrous to me. So not something I support. No.
Okay, well, I know we could go on, and we will, but right now we have lunch that needs to be had, and so thank you all for coming, and thank you, Christine. Don't forget the 4-quick survey that's on the open access, that page inside point where the positions are. So fill that out, don't dawdle, and thank you so much. We're done.